In my opinion, I think that the most patient-driven studies on walking are done in Scotland with Dr. Chris Seenan and his team, because we get the best feedback from people saying, "Oh my gosh, they actually seem to understand what we feel and what we want." They're looking at devices, the monitoring of it, home devices that you can use. They're looking at TENS devices to distract you from the cramping in your legs. And they just seem to get it. Well, guess what? They have a brand new study they're working on. And I hinted at a few things that they're looking at in this one, which just seem to build upon some of their previous studies. So stay tuned. You're going to learn how to participate if you live, I think, throughout the NHS. I think this is a remote study, right, Chris?
Yep.
Ah, fantastic. This is exciting. So, Dr. Seenan, why don't you start out, introduce us to the study, and introduce us to Sean Paul Carroll as well.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. So yeah, this is our kind of latest study, or that Sean is actually leading on, and I'll let him talk about it a wee bit more in specifics. But yeah, that's the sense of it. We want to understand the experience of people using these type of devices. So that's the
Yeah.
gist of the study. But yeah, Sean, do you want to give a full kind of introduction to it?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So our plan is a sort of smaller scale study, because what we've realised through running some walking based trials with people with PAD is that sometimes these devices aren't actually that usable for them, and that in itself presents a problem because if you can only use the device 10 or 20 or 30% of the time, you may not even get the benefit from it. So what we want to do is send some of these devices out to people. It's based within the UK at the moment, purely because we're at a smaller scale startup, if you will, and get some feedback actually on what's good, what's not so good, and hopefully advise what the next bouts of research consider for the devices they're going to use going forward. Because I think from a study that Chris was involved with, the P.A.D study, which was quite a large trial in the United Kingdom, we found that device usage wasn't all that high with TENS devices. And some of my own preliminary findings from a smaller scale study in Scotland, we're seeing that not only is it with the TENS devices that we're seeing a bit of mixed usage, but actually some of the monitors that will track your steps or track your activity, how much you're walking, sitting down, lying for per day, sometimes they're not all that tolerable as well. So the hope is by getting this feedback, we can be a bit more responsive to what people with PAD like and don't like, and hopefully select devices in future trials or hopefully in clinical settings that work for them.
So interesting you say that, because we hear all the time, just about every day in the group, "Oh, I'm going to get a Fitbit. Oh, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get this device. Oh, I need a watch to track my steps." And then literally a few months later, you still using it? Nope. And why is it that they're not using it anymore? Versus, let's say, you do have people that are just, fitness freaks, like the way I phrase that. Fitness fanatics is probably a better way to put that. Um, that they use these devices all the time. They join the Fitbit communities. They're driven. They're competitive. It's a very different pool of people, in terms of doing something for medical versus doing something just for fun. In terms of these devices, I think there might be something to that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's such a plethora or too many different options out there, and I think there's so many different things that influence someone's, you know, initial purchase of it and then continued use. And I think that's what we're trying to get to the heart of with this, is that we don't almost have any preconceived ideas, or from the studies we've done, as Sean mentioned before. It's really hard to predict who would use them and who wouldn't. What works for some people is really doesn't work for someone else. So I think we're all kind of coming at this with a really open mind and open book about, like, well, just tell us what it's like. Give it out to as many people as we feasibly can, and just say, well, what did you like about it? What didn't you like? Why did you like that? And what might make it better?
Yeah. And I know our friend Mike, originally from the UK, is cringing. He messaged me yesterday and said, "So, do you think they'd sent it to Canada?" Right, Mike? It sounds like a really fun study.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and although I mean I don't get that much coordination pain anymore when I'm walking, as you know, I can walk for miles now without any pain. So I'd it'd be nice to be part of a trial like this, but I don't live in the UK anymore. I've just got my permanent residence to Canada, so I'm staying here for a little bit now. So maybe if a trial comes up when I move back to the UK in a few years.
So
Yeah, but isn't that amazing? Dr. Seenan, you remember 1 year ago with him?
yeah,
Yeah. And now
yeah,
he's walking
that's incredible.
13Ks, and improved his ABIs, and it's still out walking. Mike,
I will,
what was your secret? You don't track your steps, do you? Or do you?
I monitor my steps every day. I mean, I do now I mean, I do up to 30,000 steps a day now. That's what I do, but I don't monitor it. I don't keep an eye on it. I just make sure that I get up, do my treadmill in the morning. I get out and do my walk in the afternoon if I get time. Yeah, and just carry on like that. I do line dancing, as you know now. That helps with
Yes.
the pain. Yeah, so I did a 13-kilometer trail in September over the Confederation Bridge from New Brunswick to Prince Edward Island. Didn't get any pain
Yeah.
on that walk either. So, yeah, I'm doing pretty well now.
So,
Brilliant.
Dr. Seenan, I just have to call him out before we're digressing here, but I have to call him out. He has actually offered to do a short line dance for us at the start of our orientation to show what's possible. So a little quick blip about his story, but showing and doing a little line dance that could be a goal for everybody at the
That is
end of the
brilliant. That is
right.
so good. I know that is, and I think what that shows, it's just that bit, and we talk about it a lot, don't we? But it's like, finding something that you enjoy, because then
Yeah.
but then also kind of achieves your goals and your exercise goals, and is testing you and kind of making you work, and obviously you're reaping the rewards for all that hard work.
Yeah. It's definite, very true. And so you guys are committed over there in Scotland to help people get to the point where Mike is. And tell us a little bit more about this study. How many participants are you looking for? What are the parameters? So if someone's in Mid or South Essex versus London versus Scotland versus Ireland, who can actually get involved? Who are you looking for?
Yeah, so the trial is all of the UK mainland. The reason for this is just because it's a smaller UK trial, it wouldn't be feasible to broaden it out to some of the other areas. In terms of how many people we're looking for, this is a qualitative study. So this is taking people's perceptions, their experiences, and putting them at the forefront of the decision-making process and what we're finding out. And what we're actually doing is we're not setting a number. We're doing a thing called saturation, which is when we continually analyze what we get until a point that we start to find we're not getting anything new out of the data, and it would suggest that what we've got is a good representation of the views of people in the UK. So there isn't a hard number on it as such.
So it's just you're trying to get, but you have only a certain number of devices, right, that you can send out.
Yes, that's correct. Fortunately, one of the limitations again of a little small study, but the plan would be that we would conduct a schedule where some people perhaps get certain devices at different times, and therefore we can work with the resources we have. We've been really fortunate actually from one of our funders in Scotland called Sharp. They provided a grant for some research we've done before, and we fortunately have some new devices from that as well. So we have some supply to use.
And I
That's a
know that
question.
doctors, sure, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so I understand more clearly. Are the devices primarily pain mitigation, or as Kim had mentioned, the data trackers also?
Yes, great question. Thank you for that. So there's primarily two things we're looking at, and they're based off of some of the preliminary feedback we've had from these trials. And one is the TENS devices that have been mentioned before, and the other is activity monitors. And you can think of it more about the themes of device use rather than a specific device. So for example, with our TENS devices, the big thing that keeps coming up is that the wires are quite intrusive. They can be quite hard to weave through garments. They can sometimes be restrictive in movement. So what we're looking at is a wireless device, which is quite small in comparison, versus a wired one. And with the activity devices, it's kind of similar. Most research devices actually, that are have good validation and reliability tend to be on the hip or the thigh. And one of the issues with that is that people who are using them have to wake up every day and stick them to their thigh, or if the sticky pads become loose, they come off and they have to reapply. So we want to see if it's more acceptable to use something like a smartwatch, which people are perhaps a little bit more used to. And it's to really draw out the usability between those two things. And hopefully, based on that, we can maybe go into the nitty-gritty, if you will, of the specific devices in the future.
Yeah.
So are the smart devices now controlling the TENS devices? Are those out there that you have an app that you can actually control remotely?
I'm aware of some TENS devices that do that. The devices that we would be giving out do not have that functionality, but they do have a remote control, I believe.
Okay.
So that is some form of wireless, but maybe a little bit behind what we're used to with all our smart technology.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about, I know, Dr. Seenan, you've done extensive studies on TENS devices, and there are quite a few new folks here that may not have heard your research that you've done on the effectiveness of TENS with people who have P.A.D. and the improvements in walking time for those and improvements in symptoms as they walk.
Yeah, so for those who haven't come across it before, so the TENS machine, so TENS stands for transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. But what it's a long fancy words, but it's a really simple concept in terms of it's two pads, normally two pads, can be up to 4 pads, and they're placed stuck onto the skin. And a kind of a minimal electrical current gets passed between these pads across the surface of the skin, and that causes a tingling sensation. And it works in the concept that of kind of distraction. So the pain is the issue or the kind of lack of blood supply in your whatever muscle or whatever part of the leg that the pain is experienced is still there. It's just what you do, the tingling from the TENS device just kind of tries to distract from that pain experience. So we see TENS machines are used in many different conditions. You might have come across them. Sometimes they're used within labour pain, sometimes in low back pain, and sometimes in kind of arthritic pain situations. Yeah, and so that's that kind of TENS machine. And what we found, and so it was part of my PhD initially, we looked at people with peripheral arterial disease using TENS machines while walking on a treadmill. And we found that when using a device that was turned on compared to a device that wasn't turned on, a placebo device, that the people were able to walk further before pain and with pain. So, and then what we did, as Sean mentioned in the P.A.D trial, the most recent study that we did on it, we looked at, okay, maybe it helped walking on the treadmill, but would it help in the community, kind of at home? So we gave people TENS machines to use at home for 6 weeks, and to see how it happened, how it helped. In that trial, we weren't, the way that these trials are designed, it was called a feasibility trial. So in that trial, we were just looking to see if it was possible to run a trial. So we didn't necessarily have any findings there saying that it helped. But what we did get is this feedback that Sean's mentioning. So the participants that got the TENS machines were like, yeah, it's fine, but I don't like the wires, or I really didn't like that sensation, or it was a bit fiddly with all these buttons. So that's kind of the bit, so that gave us a new question to look at. And this is what we're looking at now is, okay, so how can we make this more usable? Because it doesn't matter. It could be the best treatment in the world ever and make you walk for miles and miles. But if people don't want to put it on or really dislike the feeling of having it on or can't use the device, it's a useless intervention.
But I think what's encouraging here about this is that you keep going back to the TENS and back to the TENS and back to the TENS. And that's because you found that there were people that said, you know what, I think this made a really good difference for me. What is it about the TENS device that you think makes it effective for so many people? And do you find it's more effective on some versus maybe others? And if so, what are the differences?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think we're still trying to get to the bottom of it. I don't really know if we know exactly. I think the due to the nature of the intervention and the nature of the condition, there's a few things that might affect it. For me, one of the main things was that for people with PAD, and I'm not sure if the kind of everyone here on the call would agree, but it's one of these conditions that is very like I think I've been talking to people with PAD even before I started doing the research. I just got this sense of frustration and despondency, and that there was almost nothing they could do for their pain. They'd gone through all the, trying to get fixes, trying to talk to the doctors, trying to find other ways to make it better, but everyone just kept saying them, well, the word that they used to use was grin and bear it. You just have to grin
Yep.
and bear it. Get on with
Just
it.
suck
Nothing
it
you
up,
can do.
Buttercup. Is
Yeah, and that was so
so
frustrating,
frustrating.
and especially for those who felt, quite rightly that I didn't do anything to make me have this pain. This is so unfair that I have this experience. So I think there's a bit about TENS as it's an option. It's something in a world where not many people are offering a solution for this pain. It was something to try. And for those
Yeah.
people who are really keen to I want to try something, and there's something nice about TENS that it's active. So it requires someone to stick the pads on. It requires them to turn it on and to turn it up and to think about how to use it. There's kind of psychological work that's gone on that talk about, especially in pain, is if when you're more active about trying to find a solution and manage your pain, you're more likely to find a solution and to be successful. And it's because of you're working at it rather than almost being kind of quite passive. So I think there's an element there about it. And so then that leads on to those who found it more useful. I think were those people who were ready to try it. It was a psychological thing. It was what they talk about kind of activation. So they were activated to, right, I'm ready to try something different. I want this to work. And it generally they engaged with it. They maybe got over the kind of the frustrations with the wires and the fiddliness of it. They applied themselves to it and made sure the kind of the intervention worked. So that's that. But again, I say this is all quite anecdotal and just based on conversations with these people after they've used the TENS machine. And that's what I'm really hoping that this study will deepen their understanding of, is do those themes, does that kind of characteristics come through again? Are those the kind of people that find it useful, or maybe was that a red herring? Is it something else that makes a difference?
Yeah, and Sean, it's really about okay, so maybe they'll try it and maybe everyone will try anything, but even if it works, how long will they do it for? And if it ends up being something that they can never, I mean, the idea I would imagine is that, when it comes to walking, no matter what, you're supposed to be building these collateral vessels as you go. And over time, the symptoms of claudication, that cramping in your leg when you walk, are supposed to dissipate and you're supposed to be able to walk further and faster because of those collaterals. And so kind of that TENS device is just supposed to get you over the hump anyway. But what is that hump? And what does that mean for most people? And can we get people to over the hump, right? And make them use it for whatever 6 to 8 weeks, maybe even 12 weeks for many, to get them through to where they've built enough collateral vessels where they just don't need it. That's kind of the goal, right?
But why wouldn't, I'm curious, just leapfrogging on what Kim was saying, if it works for an individual and you're extending your range and duration and pain tolerance, why wouldn't you want to just keep using it and maybe have it on board? Have it on board, and then maybe now I get to walk 2 miles instead of 1.5 miles. And then when the claudication is starting to build, just hit the TENS device and get it and get the assist. Kind of like hitting the nitrous oxide in the vehicle. It's a little bit extra there, but so that would be my question, and it's coming off of listening to you. Also, I just wanted to add this in. I'd be really curious to try it, and I am in the States, so is there is there anything in the medical community in the States, Kim, that would allow me to get insurance coverage for a TENS device in this circumstance? And or back to Christopher, are there over-the-counter TENS devices that are affordable that I could just look into and expect to function, reasonably consistently within their own parameters?
Yeah, and it's not medical advice. This is
Right.
something that used appropriately, used correctly, it shouldn't cause any harm. You can always ask your doctor to make sure it's right for you. But this is, I think, one of the reasons why, Dr. Seenan, you really are looking into this as well, is one, because you found it to be somewhat effective, but two, it's readily available for people on Amazon. Right. So what are the parameters? If someone, is listening to this and they just want to try it, okay, one, go ask your doctor, make sure it's right for you, right? But number two, what are the things that you've learned about these devices and going online and researching them that it could give Carl and others, some basic things that could help them find the right one for them?
Yeah, no, happy to. And I enjoy the Fast and Furious reference there. I'm going to use that nitrous for in future trials. Definitely, that's a great good
You're
analogy.
You're quotable, Carl.
Okay.
So yeah, no, 100%. I think I would echo what you said, what Kim says there. So yeah, absolutely, this is not necessarily medical advice, and I would always say there are contraindications. So there are reasons why TENS might not be suitable for you. There are the kind of certain things you need to check before using the device. However, it is available over the counter. It is a kind of an approved, device. And again, that was almost why we started looking at it in the first place, because one of the reasons perhaps why there aren't many solutions for pain with P.A.D and claudication is because of the issue of other potential pain medications or other types of interventions. Is generally with someone with peripheral arterial disease, you might often already be on a number of medications. So likely on a statin, likely on an antiplatelet, likely on other medications perhaps. So adding in a pain medication might interact and affect some of those other things. So medication might not be the right way. And it's also the nature of the way medication works, and the way claudication pain works. As you know, it's kind of on and off, it's transitory. So you need something, and whereas a medication just works all the time or not at all, depending whether so the solution didn't fit the problem, if you know what I mean. Whereas that's the beauty of TENS. So because TENS is a kind of an external application, it doesn't interact with any other medications, because you can turn it on and off when you need it and when you don't, then that was why it was like almost seems like a perfect solution potentially, or an adjunct, something that might help in this situation. So yeah, we would be absolutely, and I can work with Sean on this because Sean's been doing work with these devices too. We can put together a bit of a guide of potential, because the machines that Sean's going to be sending out are ones that we got over Amazon or from manufacturers you can just buy online. Is nothing necessarily, and that's the point again. It's about accessible treatments, and because TENS should be something that people do for themselves and help manage their condition actively, as I said. So we're trying to not make it that it's got to be something really high, really fancy and technologically. It's like an assist, as you say, it's your nitrous. It's like something a little bit extra that can help you when you need it, but it doesn't require lots of approvals and other aspects. I don't know, Sean, is there anything I missed there or anything you would add to that?
No, I think that's fairly comprehensive. The real sell is that in the UK, at least, and I think in most countries, you can go into a shop and buy these over the counter, and that kind of power is massive. And also the devices, for the most part, there are expensive versions, but for the most part, they're relatively inexpensive as well, which means that they're potentially more accessible as well.
It's one, look at the contraindications, make sure they're right for you. Always with any device, look at the contraindications. But two, as we've learned over the years in talking to Dr. Seenan and the research, definitely the wireless is a little bit more consumer friendly, especially if you're walking, more conducive for walking. So did you like that one? You want to use
Very
that one too?
good.
I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah,
kidding.
good ball on that.
So I want to get to Douglas's question. He's asking about culture and such between the two. There are a lot of different studies out there. Even here, we have Dr. Mary McDermott, and I want to introduce, I think, Dr. Seenan. If you don't know her personally, I'm sure you know of her work. I'd love to connect you both because
That'd be
she's more interested in kind of the foods. She has Mars, the Mars bars, chocolate bars and such, that came in and said, we want to sponsor studies on cocoa, high flavanol cocoa and capsules to see if cocoa can make a difference. And she did an initial study and she found that compared to the placebo group, that they saw a 42.6% increase in walking distance for those that drank 3 cups of cocoa, high flavanol cocoa a day, which I thought was interesting. I thought that would make everyone excited. So she's now doing a grander study. She's also found incredible success with beetroot powder. And she was explaining and I can send you actually the raw video because we haven't run it yet of her interview. And she talks about this and the nitric oxide and such. And she said they haven't found a way to make it bioavailable, and let me know, I'm not sure if I'm using the terminology correctly, bioavailable enough or in a form that she thinks is the most effective for the body or the way in which she thinks it works, but she knows it works. So someone has to just create that format for this nitric oxide or the beetroot powder to make it effective, something like that. So that's interesting. I'll let you watch her interview and then maybe you can re-explain what she had found. But yeah, there are studies that are happening here at PADtrials.org. There is a P.A.D button. You click on it. There are a lot of these studies that are for more natural means, diet, exercise, and also smoking cessation that are available here in the US as well as the UK. And I need to add this study to it as well to make sure that it's available for anyone coming to the map to find a trial in the NHS. But Kathy, go ahead.
Hi there.
Kathy, you've used these TENS devices, right?
I did, yeah, and I missed the start of the talk, but I'm very familiar with Chris's project and the TENS device and Sean. I'd back absolutely everything they said, and I'm really pleased to see the way this is developing because I had quite a lot of comments about the TENS. I didn't qualify for the trial, which was my initial real source of irritation, and what Chris said about people feeling frustrated and just saying, well, what is there? You're offering me absolutely nothing, was the way I felt. I was really let down. And when somebody handed me a questionnaire about my lifestyle, I felt like picking it up, ripping it up and leaving. But I decided to do something proactive and get myself a TENS machine anyway, and contacted someone on the trial and asked them to tell me how to set it up. I knew that I didn't have any clinical contraindications because I made the first part of the cut. So I'd had all the sort of clinical thing in the ECG and all this. So I knew I wasn't going to do myself harm with it. And I don't have a pacemaker or a heart rhythm problem. So I wasn't worried about that. So I got it and somebody kindly told me how to do it and I used it and it worked. So one of the reasons I stopped using it was because it worked. So it gave me the confidence to get out there and actually improve my walking distance. And then I realised that, as I say, the wires were a nuisance, they kept disconnecting, but it didn't make any difference to my walking. So after a bit, I just switched it off and then I just stopped doing it. However, since recently, because I've got more problems, more pain, I've bought another one. But I actually haven't set it up yet because I've had a gazillion other things to do. So it's still in the box, but I would like to know how to set it up. And one of the other points that I made about the trial at the time was they weren't able to recruit very many people because it was a treadmill test walk. So it wasn't personal to you and your improved distance. It was set against a measurable thing that had to be within range so they could measure an improvement. And one of the points I made was, well, how important is it for me to know about an improvement? What's important for me to know that some people think it works and for me to see my own improvement in my own life. I mean, that's what matters to me. So having a situation where you just say to people, get it to work for you. Your improvement might not be somebody else's improvement, but it could still be the best thing for you because it makes a difference to your life. There's going to be a big difference between me at 75 and somebody at 45 anyway. So maybe I'm not looking for so much. Maybe I'm just looking for improvement. So I think anything that gives people a lifeline of something that might help and a bit of support to use it without them being necessarily engaged in something technically very medical. I mean, that's one of the things Chris said. It doesn't have to be. That's the whole point. It's quite accessible. People can walk in off the street and buy it. How much possibility is there of the NHS supporting people to do this? To actually just support them to use their own technology to help? It's because of the sort of risk-averse thing about, you know, people giving medical advice or telling you to do something. I just think that there's a whole load of people out there who could probably use this if they felt more confident and felt they were a little bit supported in knowing how to do it, and perhaps a support group that let them put their numbers in or ask questions or say, how's this working for people? You know, I think that's really important. And one of the other things I asked about at the time for those trials were the patients able to talk to each other? But they weren't. They were only able to interact individually. So all communication was only going in and out between the patient and the academic or the clinician. It wasn't moving between the patients. So there was no sharing of experience or somebody saying, I found this work better, I found if I did that. There was none of that was captured because there was no interaction between the patients. And I thought that was a lost opportunity. But I would certainly think it's an area that has a great promise because there isn't anything else, and especially not in the UK. There is no other options for people, and anything that gets you over the hump, as you said, is worth investigation.
Yeah.
So it sounds very promising.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, no, that suggestion of support group I think is excellent. I think that is one of the things that we haven't really looked at, and something I'd be really keen to think about how that might be best organised or worked on. I don't know, and Sean, I don't know if it's too late or whether or how we could look at that even in the context of the current trial. Maybe that's the next trial as we look at sending out devices and getting some people to join a support group and see if that helps.
Actually, you guys, we're in the middle of the second iteration of our app. And if you guys want to get involved on that, we're literally trying to figure out the chat portion where at the very least, we want a clinic or a research group to be able to push messages, encouraging messages, and patients can actually in the group share their milestones from the app. The concern that we have, and we don't know if it's just a matter of making sure the disclaimers are there and there's an easy way to just approve messages that go in there, which means it might not be real time. But the big concern that one of our advisory members said is that you're going to have people that will go in there and they just in their whatever mood they're in, they're going to use it as their venting place. They're going to criticize or put snarky remarks, maybe even unintentionally, that other people might take wrong. They might ask medical questions or post questions that they're waiting for medical advice, and they might forego going to the ED because they're like, well, the doctors are here, they should see this. And if they're not responding, then obviously I shouldn't go. So there are a lot of issues when it comes to that kind of thing. So would love your advice on that, and happy to lend it to you guys as well if you guys want to try it. As I said, we're going to be having, launching a UK platform, so that should handle the storage of data and such in the UK, which would make sure things are right for you, but happy to explore.
Great. Yeah, sounds good.
But definitely could use your advice on how that works. It's not just like a general Facebook group. where you're kind of at your own risk posting in there. The moment that you have a clinic formed group or a group where you do have researchers or clinicians, I mean, you do have consent forms that are signed for participation, but definitely have to be clear, and probably some constant reminders on the purpose of the communications in the group. Has to be highly curated, I would imagine. Probably not as much freedom as you have in just doing a Facebook group, and such as what we have.
Yeah. Yep.
I can see Sean smiling. Right. I'm curious what Kevin thinks about the TENS. I know he's mentioned it before, just as a potential for helping patients. And then also would love, to talk about those monitoring devices and what type of monitoring that people just don't seem to stick with, that you want to see. Well, what will they stick with? Oh, Kevin, you got on mute. Thank you.
Maybe a lot of people tell me it's better if I'm muted. Anyway, when it comes to people, it's chaotic. I have a Facebook page with nearly 2,000 people on now, which is called Living with an Abdominal Aortic Aneurysm. It actually helps people a lot, but I've got to go in there and get rid of people that are just a pain in the neck. I mean, they just come in there, like you say, just to complain, contribute nothing, and sometimes they don't even have an aneurysm. So yeah, you do have to kind of monitor that, but you don't have to be too strict. That's important. When it comes to devices such as TENS, which I've never used, I think the best device you have is your brain and your assessment of pain level. And I showed that in endurance versus intensity on those graphs on my site. I only use two major pieces of equipment to keep me on track. One is I monitor my progress and training with a Garmin, and I have a dog. So basically, those are my two main pieces of training gear. Right now, I'm just I'm crawling out of cardiac surgery, 6 months. I'm up to, I did a couple of days ago 25 miles on the bike, nice steady build. You can see the weakness there, and I just set myself a goal for next year's half Ironman in White Lake. And so for me, it's having a goal and tracking your progress when it comes to P.A.D. I don't think there's a better piece of equipment than an oximeter. And there are ones available for your toes, so you can assess, how much you've grown your collaterals and how effectively are you moving your feet to improve blood flow. But at the end of the day, the key word is self-help. You have to take responsibility. You can't just turn up at the doctor and expect them to fix it, because they can't. Once they've done all they can, it's up to you. So self-help is key. If you find something like TENS works for you, use it, for heaven's sake. And I'm glad you guys are doing these studies. I would like to see eventually, I guess, some consideration of what I call intensity versus endurance.
Oh, yeah.
Look at those two graphs and watch the huge difference between those two with respect to cadence, heart rate, frequency of stopping, and all that stuff. That's in those two graphs. And I just collected that with my Garmin. It was just a 3 mile walk using a level 4 and level 5 intensity. I think that distinction is pretty important and needs to be researched. But yeah, it's what you're doing is really good, because hardly anybody's studying it. And people say go to your doctor and ask his advice. There ain't no advice out there from doctors. If they can't fix you with a pill, they can't fix you with surgery. Most of the doctors I meet aren't as fit as I am, that's for sure. So that is a bit of a frustrating thing. If you have a doctor that listens to you, that's really good. Whether the average doctor can advise you as to whether to use a TENS machine or not, I have absolutely no idea where such doctors exist. So maybe that's just my experience. There was a question from Doug about the difference between the UK and America. And as
I addressed that a little bit, because there are studies that are happening here as well, and that's what we're trying to bring to light. But it's just I haven't seen any on the TENS device, so I don't think there's any cultural or any financial reasons. I think they are happening. Dr. Mary McDermott is doing it. A bunch of the universities have them. It's just if they're not in your area, you don't really hear about them. We're trying to bring them to light. So especially if there are remote opportunities available, or if there are trials that are looking for new sites. For example, Dr. McDermott is looking for new sites for her COCO study. And so if there are clinics and such that want to get involved in that and participate in that study, she's looking for those. Don't know if she's doing overseas across the pond or if they're here just in the US, but they are available. It's not this big cultural difference between here and there.
Well, I think there is quite a difference, as I'm in the English or British diaspora in America. I lived in England until I was in my 30s, and I've been living in America for about 40 years. And I would say the big difference is that Americans are spoiled and the British are stubborn. There are some real characteristic differences between us. When I came to America, I saw those differences only too clearly. And so you've got to kind of overcome those two hurdles. Over here, they kind of expect doctors to fix their problems, in my experience. And in England, and Scotland, where I lived in Scotland for 5 years, there's a certain stubbornness of character, which can be a really good thing, and it can get in your way. I don't know if you guys would agree that in Scotland, but I don't know. There are real cultural differences that need to be overcome and recognized.
Well, that's more,
I
on
think
the
the word
patient
is
side,
I think the word is thrawn, is the word you're looking for there. Thrawn. Chris will recognise that. It means stubborn for the sake of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a Scottish trait, certainly.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting. I mean, I would not like to comment too much, having not lived, don't really don't have that first-hand experience in America or the North America to kind of understand that to any great degree. But I would certainly, I think for my comment would be, I wonder how much the kind of healthcare systems, influence that behavior as well. I think there's that element of, in the UK, because the majority or mostly, kind of NHS-based care, there's that idea that, well, you get it all for free and you're entitled to that care, but you don't want to use it too much if you don't have to, because, so there might be more people who are a bit reticent to kind of go and seek care. And does that change when it becomes more insurance-based healthcare? I don't know. And if you're kind of, well, look, I'm paying for this, I should get I need to get my money's worth, or I don't know. And that's again, as I said, I'm not lived in or experienced that firsthand. I'm not really sure how it worked, but certainly that kind of stoic Thrawn characteristic is certainly true from some of the people I've met.
Yeah, I think I was under the National Health, and there my concern was to get the best treatment possible. And there were some roadblocks to that, though I could get basic treatment easily. In America, your fear is bankruptcy, and that's not a joke. You literally, I have Medicare and I have health insurance, and that supplementary health insurance saved my butt. It costs me $650 a month, and it's always going up on a fixed income. But when I went for my heart surgery, the bill was $240,000, and of which I paid zero because I had health insurance. If I didn't have health insurance, I think the hospital would attempt to come after me, and I'd end up paying a certain amount every month for the rest of my life. So so they are very, very different. The thing is, my brother, I heard in England, was waiting for an angioplasty. And he waited a long time before he had it, and then he had it. In America, they would do it for you next Thursday, but you better have insurance or else you're going to have a problem. So, yeah, there are very different countries with different issues, and that's what makes life interesting. Cultural differences are what makes life interesting and sometimes frustrating.
Yeah, but just in terms of the doctors and the clinics, I think they're all trying to just whatever interests them, right? and whatever they can get the sponsor for. And it's great we are seeing still some natural stuff. I just am not sure, Dr. Seenan, if people are here are aware of your research on the TENS device. And it would be interesting to see if there could be some partnerships so that we can get that information, global.
Yeah, no, I've certainly been trying to do that as much as can, reach out across and talk to as many people as possible. And yeah, to kind of, as you say, perhaps bring some of the trials across to this side of the Atlantic and vice versa. So yeah, we're very much trying to share the best practice as much as possible.
There is one thing we do have in common in that just now it was shown that dogs hate the postman in America and in England. And they go crazy every damn time, which they just did, which is why I disappeared. Anyway, I think it's really, really important to, it's in the differences in the culture and we can learn from each other. I always think if you don't learn a foreign language, you're really missing out. I studied French and Spanish, but I knew I had ideas in French I couldn't translate. And when I came to America, there's some really odd things. Like if somebody liked your car, they say how they liked your car. And they expect you to say thank you. And that was a mystery because in England, we kind of shuffle our feet and feel awkward and then say, well, yeah, I guess. And several Americans have told me, why don't you just say thank you? And it feels kind of weird. Whereas Americans are obsessed with winning. They're completely and utterly obsessed with winning. And I was raised largely in England and Scotland, where we were trained to appreciate the sport, play the game, but don't put yourself forward, which can be a real, yeah, Josh, winning is awesome. That's bullshit. It's not true. It's playing the game and getting into the sport. It's not about winning. It's about enjoying the sport and doing the best you can. And in America, I was very surprised with the obsession with winning, which I don't know if that's the case in England now. But no, cultural differences are important, even when it comes to P.A.D. And my approach is, buck up and then we'll get on with it. It's your problem. You need to work on it. And here are all the tools you need to work on it. So this group is really good for that. The work that Chris and Sean are doing is really, really important. And there is a paucity of funding for this kind of research.
And how, if people are interested in this, how do they get involved? I had AI put together a quick infographic. I don't know if it's accurate. I put it up there so you could take a look. But I put together so we could put something in the group that's a little bit more formalized, but make sure it's accurate. I didn't put any contact information on it though. But how can they get in touch? How do they participate? I know that they can always email info@padhelp.org and we'll send them your way.
Yes, at the moment we're not actually starting recruitment until towards the end of August or start of September, just because we're waiting for a few research assistants to come into post to help us out with that. At present, Kim, if you would so kindly be willing for people to email you, that would be fantastic. And when we have those people in post, again, it should be a week or two, September at the latest. We can, of course, put that on your social media groups and send it to yourself as well. And people can contact us.
Yeah, definitely. You can post in the group. Dr. Seenan's in the group. We can put Sean, we can put you in the group. Kathy could take care of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure she'd add you. But also people, you can just email info@padhelp.org and just give me explicit permission to forward on your information to Sean and Chris or one or the other, either way. But please just make sure that we do have that permission to go ahead and send it their way. So that would be amazing. I do have one more question in regards to, just want to clear up in terms of the monitoring. You're doing smart watches, some sort of smart watch, and am I wrong? What are the devices for monitoring aside from the TENS device?
Yeah, so we will have a smartwatch. We picked a Fitbit Charge 6 purely because there's been some recent trials using it. It wasn't a particular decision. The main focus is on a wrist-worn commercial device versus a research-grade thigh-worn device. And the thigh-worn device is something called the Active Pal 4, which has been used in quite a lot of, in general, physical activity trials, medical trials, but has been used in P.A.D. walking trials before as well.
Gotcha.
The problem with the smartwatch is I don't really trust the heart rate data. If I really needed good heart rate data, I wear a chest strap, which is a bit of a pain in the butt, but it gets you, gets you to Boston if you focus on it. Yeah, that maybe the new ones are better. I have a Garmin, which is about 5 years old, and pulse data, if I put it exactly in the right spot on my wrist, it's not bad. But that is a bit of a struggle with a smartwatch.
Yeah, it's that challenge, isn't it, between a research device and a commercial device? What you're perhaps gaining in usability and the nicety of a watch, you perhaps lose in the precision of something that's more designed for measuring, such as a chest strap for your heart rate.
Yeah.
And
Kathy
wants to know. Go ahead.
Would the heart rate be really important? I mean, this is I think one of the things. I mean, I do watch my heart rate when I'm doing cardio exercise, not when I'm walking particularly, because I've got enough to concentrate on. It's almost always pain management. My heart rate's slightly irrelevant unless it's going to do something dangerous, looking like plummet, or go into some weird rhythm. I don't pay any attention to it when I'm walking. Would it really matter just to get people trying to get a bit of relief from pain? I mean, they're not training, they're just walking.
If they're not training, then heart rate's almost irrelevant. I mean, as long as they monitor that they're within safe limits. For me, I'm trying to train for Ironman races. Doing all these other things as well. So monitoring heart rate is important.
I absolutely get that, Kevin. I absolutely get that. But I think
one of the things. The thing to remember is when you fight P.A.D, it's an endurance sport.
Yes.
And so you do need to push your limits. It's just very hard to push cardio training with P.A.D.
Oh, I can't do it.
No, I strongly recommend that you swim or you ride a bike or something that really works for cardio, because you need that underlying cardio strength to deliver blood to your feet. So knowing what your normal heart rate is, your resting heart rate, and keeping an eye on your blood pressure, because P.A.D, vascular obstruction, tends to push up blood pressure.
Yeah.
And I know. Yeah, and you got to watch that. That can be an issue. So I think for P.A.D patients, an awareness of their heart rate is good, but it's not a critical measure.
No, I think what you've said is critically important, Kevin, and I've been living with this for 30 years and I haven't been able to push my heart rate using just my legs and walking for the past 10 at least.
Yeah.
Unless I was walking up a hill. I've had to get on a bike or go to a circuit class or get on a rowing machine or use a combination of skiers, rowing machines, that the minute I start walking, my heart rate drops. Because I just can't, it slows me down. I can't get the speed.
Yeah, P.A.D
so if I
is
want
a
to get my
royal
heart rate, I
pain.
have to do something different.
For running, my challenge is running, because I have time limits on races. The swim and the bike are not affected one bit, but walking and running, oh my God. So that's my battle. So anyway, that's why we're here, and we're lucky. One thing I do need to mention is if anyone's considering surgery, and it was Marina's comment that got my attention, is if you're going to go for any kind of surgery, make sure that surgeon is not going to cut through any of your collaterals, because I get a feeling they're not so aware. So if you're getting some kind of bypass surgery or something like that, just remember that question. Are you going to cut through my collaterals? I used to do a lot of surgeries, and I used to do oral resections in dogs with infected ears. And so I would open up the ear canal down the side of the ear canal, but the facial nerve is very near that ear canal. So I go very cautious with scalpels. I would use all of it would be, careful, rough separation of the tissue. So be aware of that. I see that as a real risk for people undertaking surgery who, like us, have used walking to grow collaterals,
Yeah.
Marina lost a bunch.
Yeah, they say when you have a bypass, if you have a surgical bypass, that you risk losing a lot of those. So it is worth asking and seeing if there's any way to mitigate the risk or minimize the risk of losing those collaterals. That's a really good point, especially in Marina's situation. And she is back in the hospital right now. So we're keeping an eye on her. We do have a few questions before we run from YouTube. We have Beamer Jay, seen Doc a few times, keeps saying I have issues after my operation. See, in February, my legs ache and my left leg cramps. I can't quite in my craft leg cramps. If you guys can make that out, up all doc give. And yeah, and all the doctor is giving is medicine. They don't know how to deal with it. And a lot of times, you know, the reason you have a procedure is, you know, they'll turn on the faucet and hope that they don't really treat a lot of the vessels below the knee. And so what they hope is if they turn on the faucet, that the collaterals, you'll walk to build those collaterals to give the blood a place to go. So that may be one reason you want to discuss with your doctor as to what might be going on. But the whole reason to have a procedure is so it can give you just a little bit more blood flow to get you walking, to build these collateral vessels. It's not a matter of if these are going to fail, it's a matter of when, some sooner than others. So you've got to get out there and really think about the idea of, I'm having this procedure because I'm going to heal a wound and relieve pain enough that I can get some sleep and I can walk further and faster to build those collaterals. Jacqueline's mentioning about the waiting lists are being long in the UK. And it's true, 2 years or more. And that's why things, you know, seminars like this, joining our group, joining research opportunities like this are really, really important. So, you know, make sure if you can check out this study, see if you qualify. You can email us at info@padhelp.org. You know, I'll get the information. Just make sure you put explicit give me explicit permission to send that information on, because I am here in the US. So I just want to make sure that I do have that explicit permission. And if I don't, I'm going to send you a message back that says, do I have explicit permission? And then I will send it on. But you can also join our Facebook group, our UK Facebook group. If you go to padsupportgroup.org, join that group, ask where the UK group is, and we'll send you that way. And Kathy is one of the admins, Dr. Seenan and several others are the admins there. But thanks everyone for joining us. Next week, we got chapter 11 of Kevin's book. I'm really excited about that. We're going to talk about how to put the P.A.D. 100 into practice. Please catch up if you can. Make sure you go to youtube.com/the way to my heart. Catch up on the Collateral Nation. We go through chapters 1 through 10 already, chapter 11 next week. Also visit youtube.com/the Fit Old Dog to get a lot of the exercises like the P.A.D. 100 that Kevin talks about. And don't forget to go to Amazon and pick up his P.A.D. training manual. Just search Kevin Thomas Morgan or go to inspirationalselfhelpbooks.com. But please, if you can, sign up for this trial. There's nothing to lose. Talk to your doctor about it. But this seems like a great opportunity to democratize access to monitoring devices and these TENS devices to see if, in fact, they might work for you. And all of you that are on the YouTube channel right now, don't forget to like and subscribe. But thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you all.